everyone, and welcome back for another edition of the Pittsburgh Sports Castle Podcast. We are back. We had some schedule difficulties last week. Glad to hear Antonio's feeling better, so we were able to, chat with him, make sure he's doing okay. But we're back for another episode. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about. Sorry to our baseball fans, but we're not talking about baseball without Antonio on the podcast with us. But we're going to be talking some soccer, jazz hands, and some hockey tonight. One of those sports is obviously doing a little bit better than the other, but still a lot of good constructive criticism for each. And tonight we have joining with me, I'm Rachael Kriger, I'm your host. We have two of our Penguins writers, Owen Krepps and Shalene Hixon. How you guys doing?
Reacting to what's happening. I don't know, adjusting. Rangers just got the first overall pick, so that's not great, but I don't know. It is what it is.
Don't sound too gloomy. You still have soccer going on,
yeah.
But yeah,
I might have
at time of recording, we have the NHL draft going on.
Yeah.
NHL lottery draft. Sorry.
That was a waste of 20 minutes of my life, honestly.
Yeah.
Guys, cheer up.
How can we cheer up, Rachel? How?
This whole thing would have been different, though, if the Penguins were to get Lafreniere, which, I mean, they didn't. But what we're going to talk about today is pretty much just the extent of the window might be closing for the Penguins. And Crosby era might be coming to a close in terms of a championship. He's not going to retire for 5-6 more years at least, but I don't know. Chance to win might be closing. We might be the new Chicago or LA. We technically missed the playoffs this year, so who knows?
Shalene, pick up the mood. How are you?
Oh, I'm just living the dream, Rachel. Aren't we all? We're all just having a great time, clearly.
Absolutely. Before we get into it, I do have to say something. I was stunned when it was Sidney Crosby's birthday and could not believe he's 33 years old.
He is.
I mean, he looks like he's 23. He looks like our age, Shalene. It's ridiculous.
Blown by, honestly. It seems like just a few years ago I was a rookie, and now it's like, God, has it really been that long already?
That's why we could have used Lafreniere.
Mm-hmm.
So I see Owen has a theme.
We'll get to it later, but like our only good under 25-year-old players are like only roster players are Marcus Pettersson and Jared McCann. Mm-hmm. That's it. Gensel's 25. Jari's 25. We're getting old. So I don't know.
If that's old, then I think Canardo Forbes has a thing to say about that. Listen to that transition.
Hockey.
In hockey, it might be. But to kind of segue, the Riverhounds have gotten back into it, guys. They had 2 losses in a row. Some questionable officiating happening against Indy 11 and again against the New York Red Bulls 2. But they bounced back Saturday, August 1st. They got a 4-0 win over the Philadelphia Union 2. Last time we talked about them on the podcast, we noted that, they're a younger team. They're a team that's, rebuilding. I think when you have a team that is the affiliate and the second-tier team of a Major League Soccer club, it's going to have some bumps and bruises along the way. You've got a lot of your academy kids, and then you've got your draft picks that are really going down to the USL to get some minutes under their belt. But still a good 4-0 win, a clean sheet for the Riverhounds, some nice goals, and that's where King Kenny Canardo Forbes became the all-time leader in assists, not just for the Riverhounds, but in the entire USL. And I gotta spotlight Canardo for a minute because he's a great guy. He's very sweet, very shy when you talk to him, but when you get to know him, he opens up. He gives me jag all the time about not liking Arsenal in the Premier League. But I love this quote from him on breaking the all-time assist record. He said, "To be honest, I didn't even know about this record until a week and a half ago. I got an email about the record a week or 2 ago. I didn't come into the season trying to break the record necessarily, and I am just stunned that he got an email about it. And so much want to ask him to read that email just to see what it said. But a big congratulations to King Kenny Canardo Forbes, the Riverhounds captain, on breaking the all-time assist record. And then just recently, this past weekend, the Riverhounds put up another 4 goals against the New York Red Bulls too. So they got a little bit of revenge at home against the Red Bulls too. That's another team affiliated with a Major League Soccer team that is definitely one of the better. They're one of the more accomplished teams in the USL. They haven't won championships back to back to back like Louisville, but they always make the playoffs. They always put in good performances. So the Riverhounds doing really well right now, and just a little bit of constructive criticism. I know it's hard for the club to kind of match up, if you will, against these MLS affiliates and with some of the bigger name USL clubs, but just to highlight something, the top 2 goalkeepers in the USL in saves are Kyle Morton of St. Louis FC and Ben Lundgaard of Atlanta United too. Those are 2 goalkeepers who played for the Riverhounds in the last 2 years. So to see those 2 guys at the top of the list and tied at number 25 is Tomas Gomez, it's kind of concerning, but it's also in a way to highlight the defense. Maybe the defense is just doing their job well, so Tomas Gomez doesn't have to make too many saves. He hasn't given up too many goals, a couple little errors, but not too many. But another positive stat for the Riverhounds is that Steven Dos Santos is tied for 4th place with 4 goals, and Canardo Forbes is tied at number 9 for passes with 353 strung together. So a bit of good luck for the Riverhounds. They are second in the league in scoring goals. They have 18 goals this season, just behind Phoenix Rising, who have 19 goals. So all around, the Riverhounds are doing really well. Of course, we wanted to spotlight them. We would be remiss if we did not talk about them. So best of luck to the Riverhounds. They are doing really well. Bob Lilly is really managing this team in the best way that he can, and he's a guy that has brought along a lot of new faces because, like I said, sometimes they can't match their paychecks to some of those other clubs. But real quick, they got a busy week ahead of them. They have this Saturday. They are away playing Indy 11, trying to get a little bit of revenge on them. That'll be Saturday at 7 p.m. Then they are away again in the middle of the week, August 19th, against Loudoun United FC at 7 p.m. And then they return home to face former Riverhounds Kyle Morton and Toby Adewall on August 22nd, St. Louis FC. So a busy stretch of games for them. So let's talk about some hockey, guys. I'm going to do what I usually do with Antonio and Cody. I'm going to give you guys a little intro to everything and then really just let you take it away until we need to transition again. The Penguins, they lost in the first round of this new kind of formatted Stanley Cup playoffs because of how COVID has hit the world. They faced off against the Montreal Canadiens, and in game 1, they lost 3-2 in overtime. Game 2, they picked up a win, 3-1. Game 3, another loss, 4-3. Game 4, the final decision maker, 2-0 loss. So let's go quickly recap game by game. Owen, if you want to lead it off, and then Shalene, if you want to add anything, go for it, guys.
Yeah. Well, first off, the Penguins, and I'm not justifying that the fact that this bracket is weird. Everything's going to be weird this year with COVID. But the Penguins were 7th overall in the National Hockey League at the time of the pause. But since they were not one of the top 4 teams in the East, they had to play in this play-in round, and they drew the 24th best team in the league, the Montreal Canadiens. And then, as you mentioned, they lost. They were one of the teams that was very concerned about the formatting. They wanted it to be a 7-game series instead of a 5-game series because they thought that, Carey Price may be able to steal a series. And he did. Game 1, Jeff Petrie scored the overtime winner. Matt Murray got the start in that. Crosby and Rust got Penguins a 2-1 lead in the second, and then Gallagher scored to tie it, and then, of course, Petrie scored in overtime. All right, we can get him back. We did. Game 2, played a good, solid game. Zucker looked great. He had the game-winning goal in that. Gensel had an empty netter. His only goal in this series, which we'll get to a little bit later. It's kind of concerning. Gensel didn't – I know it was only 4 games here, but Gensel and Malkin were both held off of the goal column outside of Gensel's empty net goal. Murray got the start in Game 2. Game 3, Penguins blew a lead here. 3-0 or 3-1. We had the lead here. And then Petrie had the game winner again, defenseman. For the Canadiens, he sniped it on Murray. That was Murray's last game of the series. And then an elimination game for the Penguins. They were shut out by Carey Price, 22 save shutout for him. Tristan Jarry got the start in that one. Overall, the Penguins were just it was just so similar to last year with the Islanders. Yeah. It was flashbacks from there was no urgency, and was a defensive, like there was no way that the Canadiens were gonna have a better offense than the Penguins. Like they don't have the firepower to compete with Crosby and Malkin. So the way that they can win is with goaltending and their defensive play, and they did. Shea Weber was phenomenal. Jeff Petrie, as I mentioned, had 2 game winners, and Carey Price finished the series with a 3-1 record and a .947 save percentage and 1.67 goals against average, and they beat us. So
yeah, it was. I had a bad feeling kind of going into this series because being a Pittsburgh sports fan, there have been way too many instances of there's a team we're playing that we absolutely should just demolish, run through, sweep, if you want to say it, and somehow, some way, definitely more with the Steelers, but I've always seen it with the Penguins too, where we play down to our competition, and it blows my mind every single time. Like, I saw some people, like, there were people saying, like, oh yeah, we're going to sweep them. I'm like, I don't know what world you're living in.
People. I thought we were going to sweep them.
See, I knew better. It's like, I thought at least 4 games. I didn't think we were going to need to go the maximum, but obviously they proved me wrong yet again. But I knew from Game 1 that those few opening minutes, and because again, I've seen it way too many times as a Penguins fan, it was all just peppering Price for the first like
we played
4 or 5 minutes.
The first 7 minutes of the first period, and we just didn't do anything.
And as soon as they didn't score a single goal on any of that, I'm like, we're not winning this game. I just had a feeling because it's happened before, and I'm like, I didn't want to say it because we're a very superstitious family when it comes to like hockey. It's like we're sitting in the same seat. If something starts going wrong, we switch. We wear the same jersey, whatever. And I didn't want to jinx it, but I'm just thinking to myself, Price is going to steal this, especially this game, and he did. And it was just, like you said, it was like the Islander series all over again. It was like, where was the intensity? It's like, did you guys not want to show up? Yeah. Did you guys not want to play? Because it sure seemed like you didn't. It just seemed like they wanted to leave Toronto as fast as possible. And it's just frustrating.
It is. The thing that didn't show up to me that was possibly like the X factor in the series in a bad way for the Penguins was the power play.
Oh, yeah.
We were 3 for 19 on the series of about 15%. And when you have all of these players that are making millions of dollars out there to score goals, and Patrick Hornquist, man, like, what is he doing on this team if he can't? I love him to death. I love Patrick Hornquist, and he has a no movement clause. But what is he doing on this team if he's not helping our power play? Because that's really, like, yeah, he can be in the top 6. We don't want him to be in the top 6. We'll probably put him on the 3rd or 4th line. Yeah. That's fine because he can play power play minutes and he scores big power play goals. But he hasn't. And he didn't in this series. And the Penguins were awful on the power play. Crystal Tang was held pointless in this series. Didn't even have an assist. Justin Schultz he's gone. That was his last game in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
The power play really, really concerned me.
I feel like that. Like, it's funny you mentioned Schultz because there's a lot of things that I feel like Sullivan should have done differently, and I don't know why, especially in those like must-win games, you were putting Justin Schultz on as the extra attacker.
Yeah.
Like you could.
I mean, he does have the offensive upside. We saw it in 2017, but that was 2017.
Yeah, that's not that is not him anymore. He's nowhere close.
And it is a contract year. Everyone was like predicting him to bounce back. He had an injury-ridden season 2 years ago now. And everyone was like, all right, Schultz is going to have a big year. It's a contract year. He's back from injury. And he didn't. He was awful this year. He suffered injuries again this year. And not to bash the guy, but That's his last game in Pittsburgh for me. I do not see any scenario where he comes back with the Penguins. He was making $5.5 million. We're going to use that money elsewhere. We already signed Pettersson to the extension. Marino, I love the guy. I'm so happy we found him, because if we didn't, we would be in a much worse situation because of Schultz leaving. Maybe we would have kept Schultz. That would have been worse. But yeah, I agree with you. Marino is like one of the few bright spots on this team right now.
Yes, and the two biggest names that you were expecting to have like massive series against these guys were Malkin and Gensel, and where the hell were they?
Yeah.
Like Malkin had 1 assist and Gensel had 1 goal and 2 assists, and the only goal was an empty net goal. Yeah. So it's not like he really did anything.
Yeah, and
I didn't get it, because it's like I watched the exhibition game against Philadelphia, and Malkin was all over the place. It was like he was acting like a man on a mission.
There was no shortage of chances for either of those players.
I didn't get it, because it's like, dude, you're playing like out of your mind against the Flyers in a game that, to be fair, really didn't mean anything. Mm-hmm. And then you just come in and it's just like you did nothing. Yeah. And I don't get it.
I don't know if you split up the power play unit and put like Malkin on one unit and Crosby on one unit. I bet that would not go well with like Gino in the locker room. He would be like, "Why am I not playing power play minutes?" But I don't know.
That was a terrible Russian accent from a Russian that I'm just gonna. You know what? We're canceling that. We're canceling that for good. But Owen, I want to talk about these concerning statistics that you have here, because listen, we have mentioned it before. I don't know too much about hockey, but from looking at these statistics, I can see that they're not good. Yeah. And anytime there's a negative in front of a number, that's usually not good.
Well, we already talked about Gensel and Malkin. Malkin only had 1 assist the entirety of the series, and again, it was a 4-game series. That's the equivalent of getting swept in a 7-game series. Like, that's 4 games. It's not a full 7-game series, but still, you want Malkin to contribute. Gensel, I mean, he had 3 points, 2 assists, but I would have liked to see a little bit more offense from him. That line was probably the Penguins' best line, if you want to say that they had a best line, but Gensel, Crosby, and Sherry, and then in Game 4, Rust. But there were a couple chances where I'm like, Gensel has to bury that, and he didn't. And then Patrick Marleau, I was very confused on why we got him at the deadline. I mean, I obviously understood why we want to get him a cup. He's never won a cup before. We didn't make the playoffs this year, so. But he was a -3 rating, and I did not understand putting him on the third line. I could understand having him as like an extra forward, but why was Evan Rodriguez scratched? Why was Sam Lafferty scratched for all but 1 game? That third line was abysmal for me. Like, Hagelin, Benito, Kessel, Kennedy, Talbot, Stahl, or not Talbot, Fedotenko, Stahl. Those are championship third lines.
Yeah.
A 40-year-old Patrick Marleau, an unproven center in Jared McCann, and an older Patrick Hornquist, that's not a good third line for a championship team.
Yeah, I didn't see it. Jared McCann, his confidence was just shot.
Yeah.
Even in the regular season.
Though. Like, and a lot of general managers have given up on him. Well, 2 have already. He was moved from Vancouver to Florida and then to Pittsburgh. Do not give up on him, Jim, like Rutherford. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I know he's going through some stuff right now, but he has potential. I want to see McCann develop. He needs to be that third line center we're looking for, though.
Yeah. I feel like we'll get into this later, but there were definitely a lot of personnel decisions that I had no clue what Sullivan was doing, but
I just don't understand why Rodriguez didn't even play 1 game.
Yeah.
Like, over Marleau, over McCann, over Lafferty, or McCann. I mean, I don't think you'd take Patrick Hornquist out of the lineup. That's kind of a risk to do that.
Yeah.
But that third line was abysmal. You need to shake it up. And Rodriguez is an RFA. He might not even come back. So
yeah. That was what I wasn't entirely sure of with McCann. It's like, if I remember correctly, I think after Game 3, Sullivan said they scratched him because there wasn't that intensity. And so in a must-win game where you need all the intensity you can get, you put him back in the lineup. It's like...
Yeah, they put him, back.
And
Lafferty Lafferty didn't have that much ice time to like really
No.
or a overall projection of like how he played third line minutes. And honestly, if you really want to say it, Aston Reese, Bluger, Tanev is really our third line now.
Oh, yeah.
That line has phenomenal. That was like the only line that stayed together throughout the remainder of the season. They played good.
Yeah, I love Tanev. I love I always kind of joke around with my mom that we always because she immediately loved him, and at first my dad and I were like, why? I don't know why you like him, but then it's like the more we thought about it, we're like, this is literally
exactly
just like
what the Penguins needed.
It's like Max Talbot 2.0 except faster. That's why I think. And honestly, the more I saw him, the more I started to grow on me, because it's like
Carl Hagelin and Max Talbot had a baby, or like
exactly. That would be Brandon Tanev, and he just he gives 110% every shift. He is like flying past guys every shift, every skate, everything. And honestly, the only bad thing he really did was give up that goal in Game 4, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So it's like that's really the only bad thing that happened to him. Other than that, I thought he had a really good series. He
led the Penguins in the hits in pretty much just about every game. I love Tanev. He doesn't get hurt either, and I mean, you don't need a goon on your team anymore. You need a player like Tanev. You need a two-way player. Like there's no such thing as there was never a thing as like a goon.
We didn't need Ryan Reeves.
Yeah, we didn't need like a Ryan Reeves. We don't need someone to punch every Philadelphia Flyer. We need someone to like battle in the corners with Ivan Provorov and get the puck out. But having the best fighter in the league, Ryan Reeves, on our team, which we did for a brief time, wasn't the answer. Tanev is what we were looking for. He solidifies the bottom six.
Guys, we have to. Sorry, Owen, but we got to give credit where credit's due for the Canadians too, right? I mean, what did you guys see from them that you liked?
Well, they shut down the Penguins in like the same way that we said that they did the Islanders did. They just played defensively better, and obviously Carey Price was phenomenal. Ended the series with a shutout. He was the better goaltender than Murray, even though Murray was fine. Do not blame Murray this series. It was not, or Jari in the last game, but they just had a better goalie. And their defense overall, as I mentioned, Jeff Petrie, 2 game-winning goals. After I called him a mediocre defenseman on the article that I wrote saying that the Penguins were going to sweep them. So, sorry. And then Shea Weber played great too. After I called him like a shell of his former self, he goes on and has 5 points, or he was a +5. So.
I think it sounds like you jinxed it, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, maybe they took these sentences, blew them up, and put them in their locker room.
Taped them in the locker room.
Yeah, they found their way to Pittsburgh Sports Castle, and Owen, they probably had a dartboard with these sentences on it.
Hopefully we can bash the Penguins so much in this podcast that they'll go win like 3 straight cups after.
Yeah, that would be nice. I mean, the only thing I really have to add is that, plain and simple, they showed up to play and we didn't.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, if that was the one thing I was worried about in this series going into it, is if Carey Price could be Carey Price, we were going to have a problem, because it kind of had shades of the conference finals against Boston in 13. When Rask just completely shut us down, no matter how many decent. Yeah, exactly. So it kind of gave me those war flashbacks to that series, but it's like as soon as within the first few minutes of Game 1, I'm like, this is not gonna be good.
This is gonna suck.
Yeah, and it did.
And props to Carey Price too. Like, there were so many like angry Penguins fans at him, like saying like, "Oh, screw you, Carey Price," and that's like, what else are you gonna do? That's a lot of respect. We don't have a rivalry with the Canadians at all. We just need to give credit where credit is due. Shea Weber, Brendan Gallagher, Max Domi, and Carey Price, they all played a great series. So, and they're up against the Flyers now, so maybe they can take out all of Pennsylvania.
That would be nice.
They will be the Pennsylvania Conquerors.
Yeah.
Guys, let's move on to really what happened in here. And Owen, you have a lot of notes. I want to get to each and every one of them, but what probably my favorite when I was reading them was the deadline acquisitions were just not good. So I
Yeah,
mean,
if you don't count Zucker as one. Zucker really
Yeah.
technically wasn't a deadline acquisition. He came over like a month before the deadline, and he has another year left on his deal, so he's not technically a deadline acquisition. He'll be here next year, which is great.
Yes.
Um,
God.
but as we said before, Marlowe, I get why you want to try and get him a cup, but
Yeah.
he does not need to be playing third line minutes. People say he still has his skating and that he's fast. He's not faster than like Jesperi Kotkaniemi, and Nick Suzuki now. Like the league is getting younger.
Yeah.
It's fine if he goes and plays another season with like San Jose or like a non-contending team to like try and get his games played record up, because he's very close to passing the like all-time games played. He's up in the top 5 with Yager and Howe. But Marlowe, I don't understand why he came to Pittsburgh.
I feel like that was why. The playoff experience and the leadership in the locker room, and it's
we already have the playoff experience and the leadership in the locker room. No,
yeah,
that's
it's like
we have Sidney Crosby, Crystal Tang, and Evgeny Malkin.
Yeah.
3 Stanley Cups together. So like, I get if you're like the Toronto Maple Leafs when they brought in Marlowe, I understand that.
Yeah.
And he helps mature their players. Our players are already mature. We mentioned Crosby's 33 and Malkin's 34, Letang's 33. I just didn't understand it. And then Rodriguez didn't play a game at all in the series. Nothing to say there. I don't know other than why didn't he play. And then Connor Sherry. He's if Jim's gonna resign him, and I'm gonna hate it. I'm scared of it. Jim. He didn't. The reason why he traded him to Buffalo was for cap reasons. Remember Matt Helmlich? Yeah.
Yes. We don't talk about him.
And the reason why I got him back is because he never wanted to get rid of him. And I'm scared that Connor Sherry's going to re-sign in Pittsburgh for an overpriced deal and play with Crosby for 4 or 5 years. Not to bash on him. Love the kid. He won 2 cups with us here, but he needs to move on. He already did briefly, but we wanted him back. I didn't like the deal when it happened. Cahoon looked pretty solid for Penguins, but I guess he was another RFA that we would have had to sign. But Sherry just did not look 100% in this. He needed to score on that penalty shot. If he scored on that penalty shot in Game 1, we were looking at a completely different series.
Oh, absolutely.
In that game.
Yeah, like just how he was playing in Game 1, I was just it's like, oh yeah, he's gonna like shoot the penalty shot. I'm like, of all people,
yeah, exactly.
You would have to have him, and I'm like, I'm not too confident about this, but it's like at least put it on the net for God's sake, not 6 inches to the left. But yeah, I agree. Sherry, I try to always give them the benefit of the doubt when these moves are made. So when he came in, I'm like, okay, maybe he just wasn't, because I like tried to like keep track a little bit of what was going on with him in Buffalo, and he was doing next to nothing. So I'm like, okay, maybe it's just
the only time he was scoring points is when he was playing with Jack Eichel.
Yeah, so I'm like, maybe it's just because he's not like with Crosby and Gensel and all that. And I thought, okay, so maybe if he comes back, he'll find the magic again. And right away, I'm like, this isn't gonna work. Yeah, it's like, I think the recurring theme with most of this was that like they were expecting to get the same magic from a lot of people that we got in 16, 17, exactly. And it's like
Schultz is not the same level. Sherry's not the same level. Even Gensel wasn't the same level. Letang was not the same level. Malkin was not the same level. Sid was.
Yeah.
But
yeah, if Sid's the only one making scoring chances, you're in trouble.
Yeah. Jim needs to move on from some of these players that have won him Stanley Cups. If he would have, I don't know if you guys know what urinating tree. It's his videos are hilarious, but he pretty much summarized it up saying like, what if Jim Rutherford retired after 2017? He would be a legend.
Yeah.
But he didn't, and he kept making moves, and some of them were great moves. I mean, John Marino, look at that. But also, he cannot let go of the past, and Schultz is still on this team technically. Sherry's still on this team. They brought him back. Hornquist got the extension. it's time to move on from some of these players, and you have a good opportunity to just say thank you for your service, Connor Sherry and Justin Schultz. You won 2 cups here. Good luck in the future, but I'm scared. I think he's going to re-sign at least one of those players. I think it's going to be Connor Sherry, and I'm not looking forward to it.
I would just wish we'd get rid of Jack Johnson because
we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a second.
We're gonna go there in a minute. Yeah,
it's always funny to hear his name because I love Jack Johnson, the singer.
Yeah.
And every time I see people like, on Twitter saying like, Jack Johnson's the worst, blah blah blah, I'm like, whoa, a good old acoustic sesh is good once in a while. Shalene, you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. Urgency just not really existent for the Penguins in this tournament. The Penguins, they proved that they could be shut down a bit too easily by defense first teams. Just kind of your thoughts on the urgency of the Penguins in the tournament.
Yeah, it was like Owen touched on earlier, it was basically like the Islanders last year, and it's like at least last year you could have attributed to, okay, we've been 16, 17, we've been just going short off seasons because of the cups and everything, but then when it creeps up again, it's like that's why it's almost to me kind of in the way like of almost a Pittsburgh curse, where it's like you can't match the intensity of a lower seeded team that is clearly the underdog. It's like as soon as I hear in any series, especially between the Penguins and then even with the Steelers, where it's like, oh, this team is clearly the underdog going in against them, I'm like, we're in trouble, because we always, like I said earlier, always find a way to play down to our competition, and it infuriates me to no end. And I just don't get it, because when you only have Crosby, Zucker, the fourth line, and Marino are the only ones dictating the play, that's a problem, because in 16 and 17, there were very few, if any, players that you could point out being like they're not carrying their weight. Every line, every defensive pairing carried their weight.
Scored big goals. Tom Kuhnhackl scored big.
Yes.
Eric Fair had that goal against Washington.
Yes.
Trevor Daley stepped up.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to step up on a championship team.
Yeah, if you're not getting, you can't always rely on your top six, especially when the second line's not doing anything. The third line's absolutely not doing anything. Your first line is really only providing the scoring chances, and then the fourth line was doing good too. But if they're not even scoring, you can't rely, and that's the problem. I think in most of our like playoff exits in recent years, we don't have that rolling the four lines and, oh, there's a chance for us to score on every shift. It's non-existent, and it was non-existent last year, and it was non-existent now, because you cannot always count on Crosby, Gensel, Malkin, all of them to score, because if even one or two of them are off their game, we're in trouble, because we can't keep protecting the bottom six players, because something needs to change.
Now that I'm thinking about it, I think there were no goals scored by those lines, the second and the third line. The fourth line scored 5-on-5 because Bluger had that one nice goal.
Yeah.
Tanev set that up. Crosby and Gensel, the first line, obviously scored. Malkin, Zucker, Hornquist, or Malkin, Zucker, Rust, I don't think they scored at all, because Zucker scored on the power play.
Yeah.
Then McCann, Sherry, Marlowe definitely did not score. So, yeah, you're right. There's no depth.
Yeah. And that's why because I was looking through, like I was saying before we started, at this article, and they made a really good point. They were saying in the regular season, Malkin, Gensel, and Rust line was absolutely dominant. Fantastic. Why did we not go back to them?
Yeah.
I mean, granted, yeah, you had the break and whatever, but it's like, go with what you know is going to work.
Yeah.
And they just didn't. And I don't understand it, because it's just like these personnel decisions, I just can't wrap my head around it, where it's like, if it's not working, you need to change it. And I think sometimes, I love Sullivan, but sometimes I think he's very stuck in his ways and very biased towards certain players. And I think, I mean, like when Simone was playing, he got a lot of chances that he probably shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Same with Sherry. It's like,
not to be thankful for an injury, but
yes.
Thank God Simone wasn't playing. You know how many people would be looking out with him, with Crosby or something like that?
Yep.
Like they would put him out for the extra attacker. People would be furious.
And honestly, it's like the worst part. I think it's the worst part about Simone is that he's not a bad player, but he
He isn't.
cannot finish to save his life. He can't score. And if you're on the line with Crosby, you better know how to finish a scoring chance, and he cannot do it. The worst part, in like a twist of irony, Gensel really didn't kind of filled in Simone's spot in the first line because he had plenty of chances and he could not finish at all.
Granted, he was coming back from injury, and
yeah,
it's a whole other story. Hopefully, he'll be good to go next season. He's probably our best young forward. But we already talked about like the third line. We don't need to beat the dead horse there, and the lack of center depth because Malkin and McCann were just inconsistent and awful. We already talked about the power play, and then.
Got to talk about the goalie situation, guys.
Yeah,
that's what I'm waiting for. That's the real juice here. You got
Matt
two.
Murray,
Go ahead.
Played them, and that's not bad. Carey Price is the best goalie in the league.
Yeah.
It just sucks that I don't know, like these statistics fall on Murray and Jarry, especially with what's going on now. We're going through another goalie controversy. Both of them will be RFAs. Jim's gonna have to make a decision.
Yeah.
And I'll let you talk here before I say what I think you should do. So what are your thoughts on it?
Honestly, going on Twitter, Penguins Twitter sometimes is stressful. Yes, because it's like, okay, Murray's a starter for game one. I was perfectly okay with it. Everyone else seemed like they were ready to burn PPG paints down. And it's like, look, I get that Jarry, to a degree, was the better goalie in the regular season, but he had no playoff experience.
Yeah.
Who's not to say that? Yeah. Who's not to say that if you stick Jarry in game one, we lose like 5-1? What are you guys going to do now? Because and I will say I will get on my soapbox for a minute. I cannot stand the goalie pick a side in like the Penguins.
The Penguins tweeted out in like it was during one of the cup runs. It's like, fun fact, you can support both of our goalies or something like that when it was versus Murray.
Yeah, this is my PSA for this podcast is that I am not Team Jarry. I'm not Team Murray. I'm Team Pittsburgh Penguins. Whoever gives us the best chance to win in between the pipes, I am going with. I am not like
I cannot understand.
Exactly. It's like I don't care who it is, and it's like I just don't understand Murray gives up one goal. Well, we need to trade him. We should have kept Fleury. If I had $1 for every time we heard that, it's like, guys, stop already. Like, enough. It's annoying. You make us look childish. If you're actively bashing and actively hoping for your own goalie to do bad, come on. Like, seriously.
I think I heard the story on Spit and Chicklets. Shout out Spit and Chicklets, great podcast. Yeah. But apparently there was like a scenario where like Matt Murray was just like at a bar, and like someone walked up to him, and it was a fan of the Penguins, and like he thought Murray was like, "Oh, do you want an autograph or something like that, or a picture?" And the guy come up to him and said, "You will never be as good as Fleury ever was," and then like walked away. And then apparently like the teammate that he was with, like Murray just said, "Yeah, they hate me here." I'm like,
and it's sad.
What awful fans are you to do that? And like,
you're not real fans, honestly. Those aren't real fans.
When Murray does leave this team, even if it isn't like to Seattle or this offseason, no, like even if he retires with the Penguins, there will always be that criticism for him, and I don't understand why. He won us 2 cups.
Yeah, exactly. And most people don't. I think most people have that "what have you done for me lately" mentality, where it's like, well, that was
true, and that's what I think of when I'm like trying to decide what the future of this team is going to be for a general manager. But like, I would prefer Jarry right now. That's my take right now. I think you should trade Murray, but not because he was awful against Montreal.
Yeah.
Because Jarry is a little bit younger and better and cheaper to keep.
And that's what I don't get. It's like the same people that are screaming that, well, we need to get rid of Jarry. Well, like you said, because like we need to get rid of Murray because Jarry's the younger, cheaper option. It's like, don't you realize that's why they kept Murray in the first place?
Exactly.
That's exactly. And it's like it just blows my mind. And yeah, don't get the people that are like, well, he lost us this series. No, he didn't, because if the team played better in front of him, you can't expect him to stop everything. I don't know why some people are like, well, he needs to get a shutout every game. And it's like,
Jack
when you have guys like Johnson and Schultz and a defensive pairing in front of you, what can you do? You cannot be a miracle worker, because
Johnson led the Penguins and shoved Montreal Canadiens into the net.
Yeah, that's honestly what I said this whole series.
Did, like, after 2 goals, he shoved 2 players into the net. Like, what is that doing?
Yeah, it's like, I don't, and that's the thing where, especially on some of those early goals, it's like he was either running into his own teammates, he was either screening Murray by himself, or he's just creating a problem in front of the net, and it's just like, I don't get what Rutherford saw in him. I don't know if it's because he was Sid's friend, and that's why he took his word, and that's it. But it's like, okay, so you take probably your worst defenseman, and then you take a declining defenseman in Schultz, and for some reason, you guys are like, oh yeah, this is a great idea, and then you're like, oh, I don't know how this went wrong.
Well, it's kind of, I think the mentality behind putting him with Schultz is that, who else is he going to play with? Dumoulin Letang's a lock. Marino Pettersson was a lock. That was a great pairing.
Yeah.
Schultz has to play, and according to Sullivan, so does Johnson.
Yeah, I don't get why they couldn't have put Riegel or Ruhwedel in there.
Yeah.
It would have been, I think, an immediate improvement. I don't know what it is. It feels like even in the regular season, there was something about Riegel that Sullivan just would not start him very rarely.
Yeah,
and
he won't give him a shot.
And every time he was in, I thought he was really good.
He looked great, yeah.
So
and
it's
he's not Cale Makar. He's not a superstar up-and-coming defenseman.
No.
But he's better than Jack Johnson.
Yep.
Just give him a shot. Even Chad Ruhwedel. I want Johnson off my team. I want Jack Johnson off my team. I don't care how it happens. I don't care if we have to give up a first-round pick to get rid of him. I want Jack Johnson off my team. Buy him out.
Yep.
If you say it 3 times like Beetlejuice, it might come true.
Like, I'm done defending him. I defended his contract, saying that, okay, $3.75 million, that's not terrible. 5 years is a little much. And I would defend his play sometimes, but I'm done with him. Last season against the Islanders, he looked pathetic. I specifically remember when he got out of the penalty box, he rushed a guy, and then he went straight back into the penalty box. I think it was Andrew Ladd. But he was awful that series. He was awful pretty much all season, and he was terrible in the play-in against Montreal. I want him off my team. Yeah. If the Penguins are going to at least try and be competitive next year, Jack Johnson needs to go. And I'm sorry, the guy's a nice guy. Honestly, he's Sid's friend and all that, but I don't even think he should be in the league. He's awful.
Yeah, it's just, I find it funny because I feel like initially a lot of people were really mad about the Tanev contract too. Like, why are you giving this guy so much money for like such a long period of time? And it's like, I think that was the complete opposite of the Johnson contract, because he's been fantastic. Mm-hmm. I hope we keep him and don't get rid of him. But yeah, Johnson, it's just frustrating because it's like, I feel like the Kings and the Blue Jackets knew what they were doing, because it's like the Kings sucked. They got rid of him. They win 2 cups in 3 years. Columbus never won a playoff series. They get rid of him. First year they sweep Tampa. It's like, I'm not saying he's the main reason, but he helped.
Yeah. Johnson, both Johnson and Schultz were -4. Yep. Guess who was leading the Chicago Blackhawks, who are now a playoff team? Guess who was leading the Chicago Blackhawks in points?
Oh, good old Olli Maatta.
Olli Maatta has 4 assists.
Yep.
Last offseason it was, well, we're going to trade Johnson or Maatta. Which one can make the team better or whatever? And I agree, Maatta probably had more trade value.
Yeah.
But if we would have kept Maatta, alternate reality.
And who's in the playoffs still?
It ticks me off.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of ticking you guys off, who played their last game as a Penguin, in your opinions? Give me 2 names each.
Well, I hope Jack Johnson.
Yeah, I think we're going to share that one, Johnson.
But
okay, Jack Johnson doesn't count.
I already said thank you for your service, Connor Sherry and Justin Schultz. Like, I think those 2 need to go. Mm-hmm. But I just think Rutherford's going to re-sign Sherry. And I'm so scared.
since Rachael had to lay down the law and not count Johnson, I say Marlowe and Schultz. Like, Schultz is a shell of a defenseman of what he used to be. He is nowhere near what he used to be in 16-17. Just let him go. We have the people to like replace him with, and then Marlowe.
I hope Pierre Oliver Joseph turns into something, because if not, that Castle trade looks awful.
Yeah, oh God, don't even get me started with Phil. I still miss him to this day.
I was gonna say you just said Shalene's trigger word. I think.
Oh, I love Phil.
I miss Phil. And Marlowe, just if you like you said, if you want to stay competitive in this league, he is too old. I get he has a leadership experience, whatever. You have two top leaders already in your three with Malkin, Letang, and Crosby. You have enough leadership. I get that he's produced a lot in the playoffs. Well, he sure didn't do it this time, so...
We're in 2016.
Yeah, so out.
And I doubt there is any, but to any Sharks fans, we're sorry.
Yeah.
I knew you wanted this to be the Raymond Bourque type story here, but it did not happen.
No.
You should have traded him to, like, Colorado or something.
Yeah.
Hey, San Jose has a good soccer team, so that's all that counts. Gotta slide that in there.
San Jose hockey team is screwed. But.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
But hey, the San Jose Earthquakes are back.
So
let's take... Go ahead.
Speaking of Colorado, who, like, they're my pick to win the Cup. Like, if we move on here just to, like, who we want to just win the Cup now. And yeah, it's kind of nice that the Penguins are out sometimes, like, especially last year. I liked St. Louis's run they went on. I was happy for them. But sometimes it's nice when the Penguins get eliminated and you can actually, like, just watch hockey without having 7 heart attacks and double overtime all those Senators.
And without screaming about Jack Johnson, huh?
Who do you win the Cup, and who do you think will win the Cup?
Ooh, can I answer this?
Yes.
All right, yeah. So I don't know why. Maybe it's because I like their logo, but I'm gonna pick one from each side just to cheat. I have heard so many good things over the last 2 or 3 years about the Tampa Bay Lightning, and I just feel like they are so. Oh, don't cheer, Shalene. They're overdue.
They've been due since 2015, where they made it to the final against Chicago. They made it to the Eastern Conference Final against the Penguins in 2016. Then they had that incredible 100-plus point season, and then they got swept. And then they're up against the team that they got swept in for the first round against Columbus this year. That'll be interesting.
They're due, and I'm gonna go with St. Louis too, just because I want everything good for the city of St. Louis.
Yeah.
I prefer not Tampa, because if so, I will never hear the end of it from one of my friends who is a Lightning fan.
Yeah.
And it's like he always talks shit about the Penguins, like Crosby's a piece of trash and whatever. It's like, and it's always funny because it's like I finally had just had it, and I'm like, just say you want him on your team and get it over with. And he literally was like, I don't want Crosby on my team. I like who we have. And I'm like, and they've gotten you nothing. Like I said, you guys are playing in the play.
Individual awards, absolutely.
Yeah, it's like Ovechkin.
The Holy Grail is the Holy Grail. Stanley Cup is.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, it's like you guys were playing in the parade route last year and you couldn't even beat Columbus. So it's like you really don't have a lot of room to talk. But
I would rather be Yuri Hrdina, who won 3 cups in 4 years, than Taylor Hall, who won a Hart Trophy.
Yeah. Who I'd want to, honestly, I don't really have a specific pick, honestly, because it's enjoyable to watch hockey when the Penguins are out of it, because then, like you said, like with 16 and 17, I think Rachel can attest to it. I had years shaved off my life in college watching it, but I think I could say who I don't want to win it. I would prefer Boston, Philly, and Washington to not win it, because
Boston's out in round 1. Carolina is looking. Yeah. That's my Stanley Cup final prediction. That was my Stanley Cup final prediction since before all of 2020 happened.
Yeah.
It was just crazy that everything that's happened, but still, I had Colorado over Carolina, and I'm sticking with it. I think the Colorado Avalanche will win the Stanley Cup this year over the Carolina Hurricanes. I think Nathan McKinnon are the second best player from Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy, like, the direction that team is taking. And I always usually pick a West Coast team because I don't want the Cup to be in the East. But if I had to pick an East Coast team, I'd be Carolina or Tampa. Also, shout out Vegas Golden Knights. Fleury, you'll get another one.
See, I would selfishly, I know it would never happen. I would just selfishly say Arizona just to see if they'll get another cup, but it's not going to happen. But yeah, I just hope they all have a good time except Philly and Washington, Boston.
Yeah, no Washington, no Philly. No. Philly does look good. We have to admit that Philly does look like a good team, but if they win it, oh God.
No, we're never going to hear the end of it.
The worst year of our lives.
Yeah, I'm just happy at least on the bright side of us losing is I'm just happy that we don't have to run into the buzzsaw that is Boston because we can't beat Boston ever.
Yeah, we can't.
So, yeah. If we could barely skate past the 24 seed, there was no way we were going to beat Tampa or Boston or Philly or Washington. So it's like there's a silver lining in everything as much as it's painful for me to admit, but
real quick, the draft lottery just happened. What was your initial reactions to Alexis Lafreniere, the New York Ranger?
I was sitting there watching and I'm like I was being a bit of a jerk. I'm like, I hope we get it just so every other fan base in the league can just say how it's rigged and how they just like but it's like I was sitting there and I'm just like I was expecting possibly like Minnesota because I feel like they needed it more than anybody, but everyone had
an equal chance. Did you think it was rigged? Did you see the guy drop the ball and then
the balls were heavier for some than others, and that's why the Rangers it's like I just saw it and I'm like, of course it would be an Eastern Conference, like a Metropolitan Division team. Of course it would be them. So now we have to deal with him how many games out of the year. So I'm like, I unfortunately cannot repeat what I said on this podcast because Rachel told me I can't swear. So I'm like, of bleeping course, it was the damn Rangers. Like, of course it would be them. So I'm like, ow.
I think the last, 20, I think the last 3 picks, first overall picks have been in the Metro, right?
Yep.
New Jersey, Rangers.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Penguins have the 15th overall pick. They have the option to give it to Minnesota for compensation for the Zucker deal. I really hope they don't.
I wouldn't.
This draft is going to be really deep, and, I mean, I think Rutherford was expecting it to be 31st, and that we were going to win the Cup, but it's half that, so it's more than half that. So 15th overall pick. If the Penguins do not give the pick to Minnesota, the 2021st overall, or 2021st first rounder that we have will go to Minnesota per the Jason Zucker trade. So it is what it is. I'm pretty sad that Lafreniere went to the freaking Rangers.
I'm just like, could it be anywhere in the Western Conference at least?
That'd be too boring. Or even Nashville. That'd be kind of boring.
Yeah. I was just hoping if it wasn't us, it was going to be out of the Eastern Conference because we'd have to deal with him more likely than not. Yeah. And then it's like, the hockey gods are just like, you wanted him in the Western Conference? We're going to put him in your division. And it's like, of course.
It'd be hard to get playoffs next year, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Well, guys, I think we covered it all. Do we have anything else to say to Jack Johnson, not the singer?
I was just going to say, I want Jack Johnson off my team.
Yeah. We're hoping,
so that's going to be the name of the episode. I think that might be the name of the episode. Well, thanks, guys, for joining. Can you each tell us where we can find you on Twitter and any final thoughts and last words, Shalene?
I'll have my article up on what happened pretty much if the championship window is closed and what the Penguins need to do to, be successful because I am the smartest hockey mind in all of the world. But my ad on Twitter is capital O, capital K, Krepps, Krepps 85.
And you can find me on Twitter at Shalene Hixon 21. And if you need me to write something, I'm sure I can, Rachel. You need me to scream about the Penguins.
Oh, what kind of question is that, Shalene? You know I want you to write something.
Of course.
And you can find me on Twitter at Rachael Kriger, 2 A's in my name, not just one. I'm going to shout out Cody's other landing spot on Twitter because he posts a lot of our articles. He really hypes us up. So if you want to go ahead and follow Let's Talk Pitt, just one T. Let's Talk Pitt is also Cody's kind of landing spot for us. We are on Twitter at PGH Sports Castle. You can send us ideas and whatnot. We're on all major platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to check us out by searching our name, PGH Sports Castle. We're also on Google Podcasts, Deezer, Podcast Addict, Podchaser, and of course Spreaker, where we record our shows. And listeners, if you ever have any ideas for Let's do that again.
Words
If
are hard.
you have any ideas for podcast prompts and topics, feel free to reach out to members of our team in our PGH Sports Castle Twitter to send some ideas along. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We will see you next time to talk some Pirates baseball and Riverhounds soccer. Have a good night. Stay safe.